quick video review of a couple of 4K Blu-rays I just picked up, Pineapple Express and Maze Runner. Um, this one doesn't have HDR. At least that's my understanding. I know there are different formats that people are using, so it may have it, and it's just not being posted on this case. But you can see that they have the UHD Ultra or the UHD Premium designation for some discs, and others have, like San Andreas over here, HDR. It may just be a packaging thing. I'm not actually quite sure on that. I don't know if that's the case. I think for these, it may just be that they're essentially 4K content, but without the high dynamic range, or to the same extent as some of these other movies. However, the picture quality on this is spectacular. Some of the best I've seen from the discs. You can tell it's lacking in some of the color range and everything else as the others, but it's definitely, if you don't own the movie, I would say this is a good purchase. If you own it, I would say stick with the Blu-ray, but it is a step up from the Blu-ray. This looks amazing on Blu-ray. It also came out in 4K remastered. It looks really good, but it is spectacular. I didn't expect to see the kind of jump, not only in detail, but in color that this thing offers. It is just breathtaking to look at. And it's a hilarious movie, so it's at $24.99. It's also a good pickup if you're considering expanding your 4K collection. They all also come with the Blu-rays in the packaging as well, so if you haven't gotten a player yet and are planning to do so in the future, it's also something you can purchase now if you just want to own the Blu-rays on top of the 4Ks while you're waiting for the upgrade. Sound quality is spectacular. The surround sound in this one is phenomenal. That's another thing as well. If you don't know what to do as far as PCM or bitstream is concerned on your player, when you have PCM and it's feeding, what PCM does is it lets the player itself do the audio decoding, and it just sends the signal directly through your receiver. So what you'll see on the front of your receiver is probably something called multiple PCM or multi-PCM. If you want to see what's the source, like whether it's Dolby True HD or whatever, go into the sound menu in the player, under home, go into settings, go under sound, and change it to bitstream. Bitstream allows the player to then send the audio directly to the receiver. It allows the receiver to do the decoding, and so you'll see like Dolby True HD or whatever the source may be come up on the front of your receiver. Thing is, however, bitstream won't play like the audio commentaries and some of the other things like that. PCM, you need to activate PCM to hear the sort of added layers of audio to the disc. Since there aren't really that many or any special features I've seen on the 4K disc to this point, it doesn't matter to me. I just leave it in bitstream. If you want to watch the special features, you have to watch them on the Blu-ray, and then you'll have to make the change. So far, my collection is San Andreas, those two movies. I'm waiting for Sicario and Life of Pi still. They've been delayed. The Martian, the Lego Movie, X-Men Days of Future Past, The Kingsman, Amazing Spider-Man 2, and Mad Max. All great discs. Some better than others, but I'd say they're all pretty highly rated at this point. And another thing I just want to sort of talk about very quickly is buying into 4K. If you're buying a 4K set, just be very careful about what you're purchasing, because the fact is, not all 4K sets are the same. Just buying into a 4K set doesn't mean you're going to have the full advantage of HDR and everything else. That stuff still costs money. If you're looking at just a friend of mine, for instance, just bought a $600 60-inch RCA 4K television, and I had to explain that essentially it was just a 4K upscaler, because if he got the Netflix or the YouTube app at 4K, then he could watch 4K streaming content, but that because his TV still had 1.4 inputs, he couldn't actually plug in the HDR Blu-ray player and get high dynamic range, much less uncompressed 4K, because the players wouldn't communicate with each other. He'd still have to watch the Blu-ray, which the player would then upscale, and he'd still have to use a 1.4 cable. So what you do need for HDR, if you're fully trying to immerse yourself into it at this point, is you want a 10-bit panel. Last year, a lot of companies didn't actually put 10-bit panels in their sets. Samsung was one of the first in their JS9000 and 9500 and up. Sony has used nanocrystals for quite a while. They call it triluminous. LG put in a couple of their sets, as did Panasonic, but with a different implementation. Panasonic's implementation is sort of a instead of a layer of the three main colors, red, green, and blue, like you use with a regular LCD screen, they painted a second layer over the screen, whereas Samsung puts a second layer of LCD pixels over the original three. They're also red, green, and blue, but they're a crystalline structure, which creates a different frequency of colors. So when you mix all 6 of those primary colors together, it gives you a much broader range of color. That's why it's imperative to have nanocrystals. Now, OLEDs aren't capable of HDR from 2015. There was an update, but all the update allows the OLED to do is stream HDR content, play HDR through the USB port, but not through the HDMI. So the 2016 OLEDs are supposed to be capable of that. However, there's still going to be issues with more luminance from an OLED, which is still about 600 nits, and potential burn-in or screen degradation faster because of the brighter output. Nits is another thing to look at. They generally say about 1,000 nits is good for HDR. OLEDs, again, last year's were 400, this year 600. The Samsungs from last year and this year are 1,000. The Sony and Panasonics can hit 4,000 nits. That, however, you may say, well, it's better, 4,000 nits. It is, but it isn't. It's all dependent on your environment. If you're watching something in a very bright room and you want to get that HDR or Dolby Vision picture quality even in a bright room, then that's where 400 nits comes in handy, because it means the TV can get bright enough to defeat the light in the room. But for most of us, if you can control the lighting in your room, or if you don't have a big room full of light, 4,000 nits is never going to be utilized. So it is deceiving to make you think this set's better than last year's, when in fact 1,000 nits even now is still overkill for what you're going to see with a lot of HDR. So that's something to think about, because if you're looking at an OLED, it is the best picture overall, but slightly better than what the JS9500 provides. And as an overall television, I think pound for pound, in my opinion, the JS9500 is one of the best televisions ever made, because you get close to OLED picture, you get great response times for gaming at 0.21 milliseconds, you get the full array backlighting system. It's a 3D set. I'm a big fan of 3D, and Samsung and a lot of the other manufacturers have dropped 3D this year. So to me, that's a huge thing to remove from a set, especially if you're a fan. That means it's gone. And for me, that wasn't acceptable, so I'm kind of happy that I bought last year's set, because it gives me everything I want. Anyway, again, 4K, definitely I think worth the upgrade, but if you're looking at buying in at the lower end, don't bother. If you want nanocrystals, you have to go with Samsung's S series of sets. S for Samsung means their highest end line of product. So you need something with nanocrystals. So you have to go with the Samsung S series. Anything under that doesn't have nanocrystals, so it'll give you 4K streaming or 4K direct unprocessed with a 2.0 input, but you won't be getting high dynamic range. And yeah, if you have any questions or comments, just let me know. I'm going to throw up something about the Maze Runner in a little while, so you guys can maybe take a look at the picture quality. And yeah, I'll show you other stuff as it's coming in, okay? Have a great Saturday. Bye.